If you've ever tried to niche your creative agency but struggled either because it didn't feel right or you just couldn't decide which niche to focus on or exactly how to position your agency, then this video is for you. I'm going to show you how to pick a fun, profitable niche where you can actually have real impact with your clients in less than 30 minutes. So I remember when I was running my agency, I really struggled with this. We were always trying to be everything to everybody. We didn't really have a particular target. We didn't have a particular service offering. We did lots of different things. And it meant that for several years, I really felt like we were treading water. We were always super busy. We had lots of clients, but our revenue never really seemed to increase, or if it did, our profit never increased at the same time. And in general, our team kind of felt pretty burnt out. As founders, we weren't really enjoying the process. Everything felt quite stressful. And we kept telling ourselves, the longer we run this business, the better it's going to get when we just have a bigger portfolio, a better client base, etc., etc. And that never really changed until we decided to niche down. And I remember going through the process of niching, and I found it really, really difficult because I think intrinsically, as creatives, we love variety, right? We want to try different things. We want to have days that are different. We don't want to create this kind of cookie cutter factory where every project is the same and every client is the same. And so I think one of the biggest barriers that I had was that I didn't want to lose that variety. And I found it very difficult to decide like who I should work with because I liked lots of different clients. Now, I'm not going to use this video to convince you to niche down because there's lots of videos out there about the pros and the cons of niching. This is more for you if you kind of know that you should niche or you want to position your agency in a way that helps you to stand out from the competition, but you're not quite sure exactly how to do that. And maybe you've been going round and round in circles in your head or with your team a little bit. So before we kind of jump into the strategy of the how-to, I want to just quickly talk a little bit about niching and the two different types of niche that we typically see. So when I was learning this in business school, they used to talk about two types of niche, horizontal and vertical niches. It all got a little bit technical and all got a little bit complicated. The way I like to think about it is that there's kind of two ways that you can niche. You can either niche along this horizontal line, which typically is related to the output that you create. And I'll tell you more about this in a minute. Or you can go horizontally and you can niche related to the industry. So if you imagine when we're thinking about output, on the right hand side, we're thinking very broad. And on the left hand side, we're thinking very narrow. So let's just take the output as an example. If you were very broad, which meant you weren't really niching, because niche is really about kind of being specific, it's about finding a gap in the market, you might say the output or the result that you help people get is to grow their business, right? Or increase revenue or something like that. It's quite broad and it's quite generic. And in the industry, if you were staying super broad down here, so this is let's use it high, so broad is up here and narrow is down here. So if you were being really broad, grow business, you help, you know, a lot of people, I hear them say they work with small business owners. Well, actually, if you look at the classification of a small business, they're typically about 90% of the economy. Small businesses make up about 85 to 90% of the economy, at least in the UK, right? So small businesses is basically everyone. So that's really broad, right? We help small businesses grow. When you think about niching, if we're going to get really specific, if we got specific on the industry, we might say something like, really specific might be like personal trainers that earn over 7 figures, might be really specific on the industry front.
and really specific. I'm going to use the same terminology. Specific and narrow mean the same things. When we're being specific on the output front, we might say something like, what we actually do is we help people to increase their, or let's do it the other way around. Let's say we help them lower their cost per click in paid ads, right? So super specific. So if you were going to be really, really specific in who you target in the industry and the output, this is often referred to as a micro niche, right? So it's very, very specific within the output and in the industry. Up here, where we're very, very broad, this side, I would kind of argue this is no niche. And the other ways that we can niche, and that's why I said there's kind of two types, is we can be either or, right? So we could, for example, be very specific on who we help, but we can be broader on the result or the outcome we get them. On the other end of the spectrum, we can be quite broad about who we help. So we could say small businesses, and then we could get super specific on the output. So again, this is kind of niche too. In my experience, it's good to be somewhere in one of these two zones. These are kind of green zones, right? Around here. If you can be fairly specific about who you help and fairly specific about what you help them with, you have the best chance of success without the danger of that industry shifting or that thing that you help people with not existing anymore. Let's say, for example, you were helping personal trainers to grow their business. Well, there's always going to be personal trainers, right? Unless the world gets taken over by robots, but in which case none of us have jobs. So there's kind of always going to be personal trainers, and they're always going to want to do better. They're always going to want to have better clients, more money, etc., etc. So to me, those niches feel fairly safe. If you had an output that was quite specific, then you need to be a little bit more careful, because it might be that people stop wanting that thing. But if, for example, your specific output is you help people with high ticket sales, most people are always going to want to increase the average value of a sale, for example, right? So I think it's important just to talk about these two types of niche, because I think when I talk about niching, often people get confused about this. They think like web design is a niche. Web design isn't a niche, web design is the output, right? And so web design is actually, as an output, still quite broad. We want to get more specific than that. So you might then say usability design, or you might say design sprints, right? For example, you're getting a little bit more specific. Let me just change the pen. You're getting a little bit more specific when it comes to the output, right? So that's kind of for context. And then I just want to share with you three key ideas, three things that I think are going to really help when we come to nailing down this niche and actually finding one that isn't just profitable, because that's only one part of it. We actually want to find one that we enjoy working in, with clients that we can have impact with people that we can actually build meaningful connections and meaningful relationships with. Okay, so there's kind of three big ideas that I want to share with you. The first one is that you're actually in a unique position to solve a problem for somebody. So what I mean by that is the value that you can bring to someone isn't created equally. Now, I always think it's good to use examples outside of the creative industries when I'm talking about these kind of concepts, because they're slightly easier to grasp. So let's imagine you make pizzas,
right? Your output is pizzas. You could have broad, which is food, and then pizzas, which is quite specific. Now, you could go and take that pizza, and it could be the best pizza in the world, right? It could be the most unique sauce, the most unique flavoring, could have all these incredible ingredients on it, right? On a basic level, if you went and tried to sell that pizza to someone who is gluten intolerant or someone who's on like a low carb diet right now, they're not going to want to buy it. It's not of value to them. However, if you went to sell that pizza to somebody who is a foodie and their favorite food is Italian, and on that pizza is all of their favorite toppings, they're going to pay way more for that pizza. It's going to be valuable to them, right? So from a creative perspective and from a business perspective, what we need to understand is that what we offer, our output, is not as valuable for everybody. And so one of the key ideas that we work with our clients on is that they're in a unique position to solve a problem for someone. And when you find that problem, that's when everything changes. And I've just got a couple of kind of case studies here that I'll tell you about, but we refer to this as your zone of genius. Your zone of genius is all of the things that have happened to you in your life, all of the themes, all of the skills, all of the network that you have that puts you in a unique position to solve a problem for someone. So at the center of this circle sits this problem that you're in a unique position to solve, and around the outside sit all of these themes and skills. So I'll give you a really, really quick example just so that you understand this concept, and it doesn't just stay as like a nebulous thing which I just talk about and then brush over. In my life, when I went through this process and went through the process of finding my niche, one of the things I struggled with was just like, who should I help, right? Who should I choose, and why them? And so I went through this process that we do with our clients, called the River of Life, where we actually go through our life and we find all of the themes and we find all of the kind of consistent value points that may make up the kind of toppings on that pizza, right? And so, for example, I just take one of these pieces. This is actually quite a good analogy because these kind of look like slices of pizza, right? If I just take one of these ideas, when I was younger, when I was in my 20s, I was going through a very stressful time at university. I had broken up with my girlfriend, my car got stolen, I didn't like my course, I was really struggling, and I started to have panic attacks. I didn't know what panic attacks were, but I started to have panic attacks. I started to become really anxious all the time. I started to have all of these crazy things happen. And it led me on a journey of kind of 2 or 3 years of really a deep understanding of psychology and how the brain works. So in my kind of zone of genius is psychology, right? Because I've had those experiences personally firsthand, and I've had to learn a lot about how the brain works and how to overcome a lot of things like stress and panic attacks and anxiety and all sorts of kind of like mental health conditions, really. And so that's kind of one of the pieces of my pie. And I won't tell you a story about each one of these, but another one is business, right? Always had a passion for it, always been in my life. Another one is creativity. And I can put all of these in place, right? But what we start to see is when we look at these different themes, they're actually, all of these categories are positioning us to solve a unique problem for someone. Now, I'm not expecting you to figure this out on this video. This is a kind of different, well, not different, but this is like a longer conversation. So this isn't something that we need you to figure out right now, but the exercise that I'm going to share with you in a minute will actually help you get to this a lot quicker. Okay, so this is the concept. This is what we call our zone of genius. I've got some case studies here because I just love when people find their zone of genius, and I love the impact that it has on their life and on their business. And it truly is remarkable. It gives you this sense of purpose, gives you this sense of meaning.
you understand why you're in a unique position or why you can help these people better than other people. So it helps when it comes to kind of competition. I like Rachel's one because she felt a little bit underconfident when it came to winning new work and working with new clients, and this gave her a whole new lease of life. I love seeing people that win clients just through LinkedIn outreach or sending emails because they figured out what this problem is that they're in a unique position to solve and why they're in a unique position to solve it. So that's the first big idea that I really want to embed in this kind of niching video, is that you're actually in a unique position to solve a problem for someone. And when you figure out who that is, that kind of is your niche, and it makes life and business so much easier. The second thing is that your target isn't your market. So what I see a lot of people worried about, and this is definitely something that I was worried about, is if I just focus on working with these people, I'm going to lose all of this variety. And what's interesting is that the more I focused, the more I really honed in on that problem and who I could solve that problem for, the more variety I got, because I was able to get creative with all of the different ways that I could solve that problem. And that was the fun part. But the reason I'm talking about this, your target isn't your market, is because just because you then say you're going to work with personal trainers, for example, doesn't mean that if someone comes along and they own a yoga studio and they're like, hey, we love what you do, can you work with us? You have to say, no, we can't work with you. We only specifically work with personal trainers. It's about, when you market yourself, it's about being as clear as possible so that you stand out from the competition, but also so that when you're talking to those people, they feel like you just understand them. And that's one of the keys to marketing, and one of the keys to niching, is that your prospects will start to feel like you understand them better than anybody else. And that's why they will trust you to solve that problem for them. So your target is in your market. And just kind of going back to metaphors and analogies, I like to think of a dartboard, right? We are, as in our marketing, we are aiming for bullseye. Now, every time you throw a dart, you're not going to hit bullseye. Okay, so you're aiming this direction, you're throwing darts, you're telling the world who you help and who you work with, but sometimes those darts miss, and sometimes people misinterpret that, or they read between the lines. Or another thing that we found is that potential clients are very aspirational. So we often say quite clearly in our marketing, and when people apply to work with us, we work with small agencies, and really you have to be doing kind of north of about 250,000. You have to have a small team for us to really help and get impact. But we often get people wanting to work with us below that. Now, we have actually created a program recently, which does help people who are less than that, which we're kind of trialing out at the moment. But for the last 2 or 3 years, that's what we've been marketing. And yet, despite that, people still come to us saying they want to work with us when they're not in that category. So just remember that just because you're targeting those people doesn't mean that they're the only people that you can work with. The final principle I want to share with you before we actually get down into the exercise of how to do this is that you want to date first and then marry. This isn't just about saying, right, I know who my niche is now, I'm going to go away, I'm going to change everything, I'm going to change my website, I'm going to change my branding, I'm going to change this, that, and the other. In fact, we've had clients do that, or we've had people do that before they've come to us, and they've said, oh, I just spent X amount on branding, and I just did all this stuff on my website, and it didn't really work. It wasn't the right niche, or I changed my mind, or whatever. And so they just wasted essentially all of this money. So we don't encourage our clients to do that. We encourage our clients to date. And what I mean by that is test this out. So when you have a theory about who this niche is going to, or what this niche is going to be, who you're going to help, what you're going to help them with, go out and do some kind of test projects, go out and have lots of conversations with those sorts of people, and make sure that the problem that you want to solve is the problem they actually have. Make sure you actually enjoy working with them. Make sure you feel like they're your kind of people, and date first before you actually commit to that niche. And that often helps people as well with this process. So then the question comes, how do we do it? Once we understand these principles and once we're kind of committed to finding the niche, what do we do? Well, the first thing is we really just want to list out as many people that we can think of that we may want to work with as possible, right? So if we go back to this diagram here, what tends to happen is people get these themes, and then we think, well, who are the sorts of people that are at the intersection of these themes? Like, who lives at the intersection, just for example, of these three things of creativity, psychology, and business? Well, maybe artists, maybe freelancers, maybe creative tech companies. There's a bunch of people that maybe, or a bunch of industries that maybe sit in the intersection here. So what we would do is we would just go and actually just start writing them here. So I'm gonna change something different. I'm gonna say something like personal trainers, right? And just to be very clear on this exercise, I might choose something that is quite different. So for example, I might say artists, and then the final one, I might say tech companies. Okay, so now here's what we're going to do, and this is where it becomes a bit more logical and a bit less emotional. Okay, so the first thing, each one of these sections here is going to have a score out of 10, and this is going to be for each. I haven't done this in here because it's just a little bit messy, but what we're going to do is we're going to score each one of these categories out of 10. So I'll talk you through each one, and then you can do this for yourself and your own business. So the first thing is you look at this type of client and you think, how much would I enjoy actually working with them? Now, the way that I think about this is I think, would I kind of like to hang out with them? Would I like to spend time with them? If I had a totally free day, would I choose to go and spend a day with these people? Would I find that interesting? Would I find it motivating? Would I find it exciting? Now for me, I've had personal trainers. I know personal trainers. They're great people, but the idea of spending a day and talking about fitness doesn't particularly interest me. I would probably be bored after a few hours. So really, I'm probably a 4 or maybe a 5 out of 10 in terms of how much I'd enjoy working with them. Now, what problems do they have that I think I could solve? Well, some of the stuff that I teach probably would be relevant to them, and probably would help them grow their personal training business. So how big of a problem is that? If 10 is like, this is the biggest problem they have right now, and 1 is it's not really a problem for them, where is that on a scale, them growing their personal training business? Well, for some personal trainers, it's probably quite big, right? So let's think about the personal trainers that it's a big problem for, right? It's an 8. How much money are those personal trainers likely to have to invest in getting help and solving that problem? Well, if their biggest problem is getting clients or growing their business, then maybe they haven't got a huge amount of cash to invest, because that's what they're trying to get, right? More money. So maybe that's about a 6 out of 10. And then the final thing is, how easy would it be for me to start a conversation with them? Like, how many personal trainers do I actually know where I could go and pitch an offer to them, say, hey, by the way, do you need help with this thing? Well, for me, that's probably like a 4 out of 10. I know a few in my network, but my network isn't absolutely huge. It's not like all of my network are personal trainers, right? So what I would do now is I just go along, and what I'm doing is I'm adding up this section here, okay, these numbers here. So I'll just go along and I do 4 plus 8 plus 6 plus 4 is 22, right? So 22 is the score for that. And now I'll just do it again, and I would say, right, how much would I enjoy working with artists? Well, I actually really love artists, right? How big is the problem that they've got right now? Well, it's actually massive for them. They love doing their work, and they are good at it, but they're not typically very good at the business side of things. So that's probably it's probably bigger than personal trainers. It's probably 9 out of 10. How much money do they have? Well, in my experience, artists don't have a lot of money unless they're selling really high-end art and they're working with galleries. So maybe there is, what I will say with the money part is it is just a kind of guide, because there's always a section of the industry that has money. So for example, there might be some
artists that are quite well known, they're in some big galleries, they're earning good money, but the gallery's taking like 50% commission. Well, if I could show them how to get people buying that art directly, then they've got money because they're selling it, but they're just not making as much money as they'd like to make, right? For example, so I could think about those. So maybe that's like a 7 or 8 out of 10. And then how easy would it be for me to start conversations? Well, I know a few artists. I do have a network of artists, but I'm not surrounded by them. I maybe could have a conversation with 5 or 10, and then at that point I might start to struggle. Now, you might have something. So for example, you might have someone you know that works with lots of artists, or you might be friends with someone who has a platform that has lots of artists on. So if that's the case, when we say conversation, what we're really talking about, what we're really looking at here is route to market. How easy would it be for us to get in front of these people, ask them questions about their problems and challenges, get to know them better, maybe do some test projects and things like that. That's what we're really looking at here. So just think about how easy is it for you to actually start conversations with these people. So if we add these up, 8, 9, 7, 6, I think that's 30, if I've done the maths correct. And then I do that, right? So I'd go through, and if there's more than 3 people that you've come up with, then just keep adding these. And it's actually really simple. The kind of niche that you're going to focus on first is the one with the highest score. Now, typically, if it's over 30, I would say it's probably got some legs. If it's under 30, probably one of these isn't really a good match. Okay, so that's all we're going to do. We're going to use it in a very numerical way to take the kind of emotion and the stress and the confusion out of it, and we're just going to pick the highest number, and we're going to go with that first, and we're going to go out and start conversations with those people. Like I said, date, not marry, and really find out, like, what is that core problem that they've got, and what in my history, in my network, in my skills, in the experiences I've had might enable me to solve that problem in a unique way, better than somebody else could. That's really what we want to find out.
I hope you found that video valuable. Now, if you're anything like me, you might still be feeling a little bit overwhelmed. There is so much information out there. It's quite difficult to know what things apply to us, and more importantly, what things to implement first. That's why I've created the Agency Roadmap. It's a piece of software that learns about your business and creates a custom strategy based on your specific situation. All you have to do is answer 25 questions, and using thousands of data points from agencies that we've successfully helped to scale, it will show you exactly what you need to work on right now to grow your business. You'll also receive a free copy of my best-selling book, and you'll know exactly what chapters in here are most relevant for you. So if you want to stop guessing and be confident that you're actually working on the right things, just click the link below and get a custom roadmap for growing your agency.